I need some vitamin B.
Yeah, you can't take vitamins anymore. You don't eat, you don't drink, you don't go to the bathroom. All that shit's over with. In about a year's time, you're gonna get a chance to go through the other side again, to become what's known as a pure spirit. But in the meantime, you're what's known as an earthbound emanation, which is a rotting cloud of bioplasmic particles dripping ectoplasm from every orifice.
Relax. All right, Bannister. Can you at least give me a ride so I don't miss my funeral?
The Frighteners is a 1996 comedy horror film directed by Peter Jackson, starring Michael J. Fox, Trini Alvarado, Peter Dobson, D. Wallace Stone, Jeffrey Combs, Jake Busey, and many more. Let's take a quick look.
There has been a destructive force unleashed on this town such as I have never seen.
Oh my God, I don't believe this is not happening!
We have got a poltergeist!
Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not gonna be cheap. Although I do offer a 6-month guarantee.
That fellow takes us totally for granted.
Hey, Stuart, in or out, huh?
Frank Bannister had a remarkable ability
Psychic investigator?
to communicate with the dead.
You could see spirits?
Emanations are normally confined at the cemetery,
You cannot push spirits around!
although they do escape.
And an uncanny knack
We're gonna scare the living daylights out of your parents.
for making a profit off the living.
We're supposed to be his business partners.
Everyone says that you're a fraud, but I've seen what you can do.
Give it up, Frank. Death ain't no way to make a living.
But now, some things put the fear of death in the living
What is happening to me?
and sent the dead running for their lives.
I've seen a figure in a cape.
That was the soul collector. When your number's up, that's it.
Frank, we got problems. All these murders that have been going on in Fairwater, they're gonna pin them on you.
From Universal Pictures and Robert Zemeckis.
You're next, pal.
And acclaimed director Peter Jackson.
We don't stop till the screaming starts, you dig?
The Frighteners.
Welcome back to the Cult of Films. I'm your host, John, and joining me is a very special guest, ported over from the Film Hooligans podcast, as well as Brainstorm Brewery, Mr. Jason E. Auld. Welcome to the Cult of Films, sir.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for getting frightened with us.
Yes. Why are we talking about 1996 The Frighteners, Jason?
Because nobody else is, and they should be.
It's insane. Do you have something with you to keep you warm and cozy during this frightening time?
I'll go with kind of a double feature tonight, since we got like sort of a dark and stormy mood for the movie for like rainy New Zealand during the rainy season. I'm drinking a dark and stormy here. But I also have a beer called London Fog from Shorts Brewery in Michigan. And this is it's an ale with lactose and tea. And it sounds like a weird combination, but it's actually really, really good. And they're going to stop making it soon, I'm sure. So I'm really stocked up on it.
Wow, that sounds delicious, man. I am very excited for my offering tonight. I have the Rogue Bat Squatch, Hazy India Pale Ale 6.5%er. This is a bomber version of this, so this should keep me nice and toasty. I have been so excited to try this. Wow. That thing is hazy. So, L'chaim,
so
sir.
I have a dead soldier on my. I've got my favorite hazy IPA here, Boss Tweed from Old Nation in Michigan. That's a fantastic hazy. That's a very good choice. Prost. It's a great night for dark and stormy fogginess, and definitely for haziness, because this movie kind of has it all.
Oh my God. Absolutely. So what... Did you see this movie in the theaters? Because I don't think I did. I think I watched it.
So this came out when I was
media.
12, and it was rated R.
right?
It did not deserve its R rating, but it was rated R, and so I saw it on HBO. I feel like my grandparents had HBO, and we didn't. So whenever we went for the holidays, we would just like see what was ever on Cinemax or HBO or whatever. So like, I definitely caught this at my grandparents' house. So that's one of the reasons this is such a fond memory for me, because it kind of reminds me of, my entire family still being alive.
Not ghosts trying to set up debunked like ghost hunting
exactly adventures. I was seeing all these people getting killed left and right. I'm like, that'll never happen to our family. We're gonna be close forever.
This thing, I like I said, I saw it home media, and it was actually a couple years after it came out. Same thing, I was around the same age, and from what I heard, everyone just thought it was like, my sister was around the age where she was a teenager, and like all of her friends were going to see it, and I think they were just like, oh, that was stupid, because they thought it was a marketing thing, right? They thought they were going to see just a straight up like haunting, slasher type film, and it's just, I mean, it turned out to be anything but that, but so much better. But at the time, I could see where people would kind of feel that way about it.
It was marketed wrong, and I think people had the wrong expectation. So a couple things could happen. A, people could have been aware of Peter Jackson's Dead Alive.
Right.
Which would have primed you for exactly the movie this was. B, they could have marketed this as sort of the successor to Beetlejuice, which came out a few years earlier.
Yes.
If you'd been like, this has got Beetlejuice vibes. We got Danny Elfman to do the music. Come on. That could have primed people. They could have marketed it a little bit more differently. Or this movie could have just been PG-13. Had this movie been PG-13, people would have gone to see it on dates a little bit more. And I think but potentially it would have, maybe people could have brought their kids, and it would have just been like, oh, there's not a ton. When this movie got its R rating, they're like, well, screw it. We'll go back and add some more gore, I guess. But like, this movie is sort of like The Matrix, where it really didn't deserve an R rating. I mean, this wasn't because of Columbine.
Right.
I don't think. That would be weird if like Columbine made a movie that came out 2 years earlier get an R rating, like it happened with The Matrix and Boondock Saints. But I'm pretty sure that was just something weird about like the occult, or just seeing people go to heaven or not, kind of spooked the really conservative people that decide the film rating. So Peter Jackson fought for PG-13 on this, which it deserved. Didn't get it, and he's like, all right, I guess I'll put some more blood in or whatever. But this really could have stood to be PG-13, and I think it would have made a lot more money.
Peter Jackson just nailed it. He hit it out of the park with the casting of this. For a PG-13, because he packed this film full of your favorite, the who's who of your like scream queens, and just crazy and like really good, like the Sharps kind of like Reanimator and From Beyond, like Jeffrey Combs, D. Wallace Stone, all them. But then putting Michael J. Fox on the front cover, just like, oh yeah, come see my PG-13 movie and let me introduce you to this world of just great horror like this.
Slash to the future. Yeah.
Exactly.
But not only that, he had some nods, Mm-hmm. He's like, who better to play a role of someone than Gomez Adams himself, television's John Astin.
Yep.
How about Arlie Ermey plays a role as like a from the grave drill sergeant, and even put some like not so subtle nods to some of his previous casting when he put Melanie Linsky in the film, who he'd worked with on a previous film.
Yeah, on Heavenly Creatures, absolutely.
So she had a cameo in the film, and then he named the doctor and her husband the Linskys after Melanie.
So good.
It's like a blink and you miss it cameo. She's sort of like a deputy, and she like turns around. I'm like, it's Melanie Linsky.
It's even quicker than his own cameo, right? He plays like that, like nasty.
Yeah, he's like the dude in the leather jacket Michael J. Fox runs into. Yeah,
and Jake Busey, man, like, and around this time, I don't think Was this coming right off of like Starship Troopers? There was a very specific time in the 90s where
Starship Troopers was like 97.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this was maybe a little before, but there was that little tiny pocket of time in the 90s where Jake Busey was like getting these kind of roles.
He kind of started in horror a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of his first roles was Tales from the Crypt, and he did he did stuff like Twister. Yeah. You know, he just had like smaller roles, and then like after this, it's sort of weird how his career went. He was sort of like, well, I look like my crazy dad, and then everyone's like, we don't like your crazy dad because he got a head injury in a motorcycle wreck, and now he's tough to work with. So maybe that hurt him. But I mean, he worked steadily. He did a couple movies a year, basically from then until now. So he's getting some leading roles. He's got a weird look, so he gets to play a weird looking guy every once in a while. But then sometimes he's like, I'm the best friend. I'm not the romantic lead because he looks like he would say funny stuff. So that's helped him, right? He's played a lot of goofy characters. So
he was occupying the same space as like a Matthew Lillard back then, I feel like.
Yeah, and they were both like, I'm more off-putting physically. No, I am. Matthew Lillard's like, I got too much gum showing, and then Jake Busey's like, I have 0 gums showing.
This movie made, unfortunately, $29 million in the box office compared to its $26 million budget.
They made this movie for $26 million. That's crazy.
Million. I know.
So here's why that's nuts. If you look at the visual effects in this movie, they are not terrible by 2020 standards.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll agree. Yeah.
Like anytime someone's a ghost, looks pretty good.
Looks amazing. Yeah.
Like the giant worm that took everybody to hell, I was sort of like, I want my MTV. But like, before that, anytime someone's a ghost, like all the green screen stuff they did, it looked pretty good.
Yeah.
So they were a little bit daring with their VFX. They didn't shy away from doing some difficult stuff. You know, Peter Jackson sort of like, I want this to be a slapstick comedy.
Right.
Horror movie. So, you know, it's like, I want a dude to bang a mummy, and I don't care how much money it costs. So the fact...
Make it look cool. Yeah.
That they made the venerable John Astin bang a mummy.
Can you imagine him reading that scene, like in the script? He's like, all right.
He's like, so my ghost butt is going to come out of the sarcophagus, then go back in?
Right.
They're like, yes, we're going to have to animate.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to animate a ghost going in, being visible, then not visible. Like, the visual effects are pretty good.
Yeah.
So the fact that you get somebody like Michael J. Fox to do this movie, but also you have decent looking special effects, the fact that they got that in for under $30 million was a little bit of a success story.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you could see that this was, you know, right at the dawn of him kind of going on and becoming like the standard of a special effects film franchise in the Lord of the Rings. So obviously he knew what he was doing with what was available to him budget-wise and just technology-wise at the time. Some of the scenes, like, you know, yes, the Reaper, some of the Reaper scenes are real wonky, but some of them, like when Michael J. Fox is like pseudo dead and he's kind of floating, and then he just sees like the Reaper like jumping from like building top to building top, that looks really good. It's just like when he is like, it's the reveal when he sees like he throws Jake Busey's face on the thing, which is a cool effect, but then he's like fighting the mud monster, not so much. Yeah.
I thought when he threw the face on the tombstone, it looked pretty good.
Looks great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like some of the stuff was hard to do back then. Some of the stuff you could accomplish it with like a mixture of practical effects and then like a small amount of visual effects, which was fine. And some of the stuff is just like, look, we need a full CGI Grim Reaper. And like, this is the year Final Fantasy VII came out. And like, Cloud was made of like 11 polygons in that game.
And everyone's like, this is groundbreaking.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can you believe that guy whose hands are triangles looks so good? And they're like, also, I want a Grim Reaper that looks flawless. Like, it was crazy that they they got it to look as good as it did for 96.
But like you said, like it's a great mixture, a very underrated mixture of good practical and makeup, because the judge still had, that was all makeup. And that was incredible, and they dressed him in that thing, and then of course added the green screen to him, so they like took pieces of his body away. But like all of the actual makeup in there is flawless. Like it's all Rick Baker, so what you're getting. There's that level of pedigree that his fascination with pushing the envelope for a movie like this with the effects was what Ebert said at the time. And this is when there wasn't the internet really. Movie reviews from like Siskel and Ebert and like this would make or break your film. Literally just like so much power to these people. And he's just like,
it was the guy in your newspaper. And
right.
You like read the guy in the newspaper and you're like, I guess we're not going to go see this. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just like, the story was okay, but this was just a movie about special effects. And it's just like, oh God, like, did you watch this movie with the sound off or something? I don't know. It's shitty to think that they had so much power over these like great films like this. Probably why, a lot of people would, especially like older folks, would wait for the Siskel and Ebert review to come out. And then when they shit on it, and that was it.
What I will say is this movie did bad word of mouth, because this movie had a $6 million opening weekend. And so as much as you want to blame the marketing, when a movie has a $6 million opening weekend and only does 18 mil in the United States, that means people like went and saw it and crapped on it.
Yeah.
Because I think they wanted an R-rated movie, and I think they wanted not another Beetlejuice, I guess. And I think people were confused by it. But like, I'm really surprised that more people didn't really dig this movie when it came out, because it really has everything a horror fan should want.
Yes.
Especially if you liked something that's got a more of a comical bent, like Reanimator.
Exactly. And I think that's the people that did get it, and that was the following. The people that like those films are the ones that cherish this film. Let's talk about the cast.
Us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Us and like 3 other people. Let's talk about some of the casting. This was Michael J. Fox's last on-screen main role. This was like right at like a couple years. 99 is when he kind of told everyone that he had Parkinson's, and then he would do, or he has done since then, a couple of like voice acting roles. But I thought he was good.
Well, I think he wanted to do TV.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just like, I mean, he made, I think Mars Attacks was like the last time he was on screen.
Was he in Mars Attacks?
It was this or Mars Attacks. They both came out in 96. He did some VO stuff, but like, I think he just really wanted to do television, because I think the shooting schedule for a movie was pretty rough, and a shooting schedule for a TV show is sort of like 8-hour days, go to town. I think he wanted to do some television, and then even that became a little bit taxing for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, because this was a really, like, I don't know. I know how you feel about actors, but as far as just casting the right person for the right role, I think he really nailed it with this role. I think Michael J. Fox was great in this. He had that familiar kind of, it was Marty McFly grown up, and now as a con man, and it worked really well in this scope. And then of course, like we said before, just the rest of the cast, who they filled it with. Dee Wallace-Stone she was so good and had such a cool like arc, and of course like she was a famous scream queen, through the 80s, the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So she was good at these kind of roles.
She was in my favorite slasher movie of all time, E.T., when they almost cut that alien open. But I mean, it's kind of funny how she did just like a nice mixture of this. Like, she did Cujo and E.T. Like, not a lot of people had that luxury.
And Mommy
where
Dearest.
She was like, you can put me in regular stuff, that's fine. And she's worked really steadily since then. A lot of people sort of like, when they stopped being in their 20s, like Jamie Lee Curtis, had a career after slasher stuff, and not everybody did. So like, I think she pivoted really well. And I think she did it like a nice mixture of stuff like this, and then like some more serious roles.
And then of course, just like Jeffrey Combs. Like that's like full stop. Jeffrey Combs is just like, if you've seen Reanimator or From Beyond or any of those films, you totally know what we're talking about. But if you haven't and you've just seen the Frighteners, like this is like training wheels off. And this was supposed to be like, this is a big budget film, and they let this cult film god completely just go full ham. He is more chewing up the scenery than Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura. Like they just let him go, and it just, oh my god, it's one of the coolest. There's like a super cut on YouTube. Someone just did the Jeffrey Combs scenes, and it's so entertaining. Like he's just so good in this. If that's what you want, he did it. Yeah, that's what Peter Jackson wanted. He wanted Jeffrey Combs to come be Jeffrey Combs, and like there wasn't a whole lot of casting for this movie. Right. Peter Jackson had a lot of people in mind. He wanted to shoot in New Zealand. And the studio's like, fine, but you got to make it look like America, which he's like, okay, well, let's import 200 cars with the steering wheel on the left and then with the American license plate. That's cool. Yeah. That's affordable. He wanted to use a lot of actors from New Zealand, which is like good for him, having basically no clout and just still leveraging it, being like, look, I realize I've done a couple good movies, but this is what I want. So he wanted just Michael J. Fox, and he wanted just Jeffrey Combs, and he wanted, just Dee Wallace. And I think that's really amazing. Yeah. Another great thing about the casting is I saw this movie a long time ago, and if you'd asked me like a couple weeks ago who was in the movie, I would have said Andie MacDowell was in it. I would have said Hugh Laurie was in it. Right? And I was like, oh, that was Trini Alvarado? Okay. Yeah. What, did she do anything after this? No. Okay. Little Women? That wasn't Hugh Laurie that played the other... Maybe it's because I saw Chi McBride and Hugh Laurie opposite each other on season 3 of House, and I was like, yeah, that's probably where I got that. I don't... It's kind of some of the other casting was sort of like, I don't want to say forgettable, but like I just Shazammed a lot of the cast of this movie. Yeah, I love how Jeffrey Combs, who plays, Special Agent FBI Milton Dammers, is constantly in this state of like unease and like uncomfortable. Like he tries to sit down at one point and then he has to like get back up, and like when women scream at him, he has to vomit immediately. Well, he has hemorrhoids. Yeah. Like he did the whole shtick with the hemorrhoid donut, and that's why he was uncomfortable sitting. Oh god, that's some method actor BS. He's like, these guys got hemorrhoids. He's like, how? Why? I can't sit down. No, he's just got hemorrhoids. Yeah, I can't sit. And it's like, cool, man. I love working with method actors. Whatever. He's got hemorrhoids. You did it. It's like, it's hard to argue with the results, though. It's sort of like, great, okay, yeah, cool. Do your little hemorrhoid donut bit, whatever. But like at the same time, he just built this just weird dude who just tears his shirt open and he's like, I got ink from every cult I investigated. My body's a roadmap of pain. Oh, God. Oh, God. That scene, the interrogation scene, is one of my favorite scenes in, like, any movie. Of him and Michael J. Fox, because it just keeps ramping up, and like Michael J. Fox is just sitting there and just like not saying anything, and then he'll like go back, or he'll say like one thing, then he'll go back to Jeffrey Combs, and he just like ramps up like every single time, and the camera just gets closer and closer. There's a lot of that in this too, like a lot of like weird, extreme, uncomfortable close-ups, and these are a lot of the close-ups with wide-angle lenses that make it look really not Peter Jackson thing. Even Jake Busey, like you said, he's just kind of like the friend, but who knew you just had to throw contact lenses on Jake Busey, and it makes him look really terrifying. Like he looks crazy in this. He has that whole natural born killer scene, the famous hospital scene, which I guess is pretty much why they wouldn't budge on the rated R. That could be, that was, but I mean, they didn't show anything. Right. They cut away really every time. Scene. Yeah. So they shot this with the hope that it would be PG-13. And then when it got R, there was so little they could do to justify it. And so it sort of really feels like a PG-13 movie. Like Beetlejuice could have easily been PG. Yeah. I think. There was like nothing all that objectionable, and it was weird. So, like Beetlejuice, I was just like watching it like it was a PG-13 movie when I was a kid, and then he goes, "Nice fucking model," and he grabs his crotch and honks, and I was like, "What? What is going? This is who's this for? What age group is this the nice fucking model scene for? Like, what is going on? Am I like
there's a Saturday morning Beetlejuice cartoon. Right. Why is he grabbing his dick? I don't understand. Like the Back to the Future movie, there was like the principal of the school in the Back to the Future movie like hit some alien or something. He was like, "You're a son of a bitch," and I was like, well, "Who is this for?"
Yeah.
I watched the Masters of the Universe movie when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, "Yeah, son of a bitch." I learned that from the movie based on a child's cartoon / toys line. Like they made the Masters of the Universe movie to sell more toys. It's I already have a Beastmaster, but I don't have a Beastmaster from the movie toy, so I got to get that now. Like they just wanted to sell everyone the toys they already had, but they're like, also the bald principal from Back to the Future is going to cuss at your children, and you just need to be ready for that.
Yeah, I would have traded in the nice fucking model for maybe a wider release, but I don't think Beetlejuice needed any help. I think that movie did fine, but this movie
it was also weird, and this movie was weird too, and that like that didn't help it out any. I don't think
it did its job too well, where it like completely didn't even have to show you, and your mind saw all those like orderlies and nurses get shot, and that's where they're just like nope, and they're like, well, but we cut it to where, you know, this is it within the parameters, but they just did too good of a job.
But it's not like Peter Jackson can't do horror, like an R-rated horror movie, because if you watch Dead Alive, that's really, really gruesome.
Yeah.
It's not only got, like, the disgusting scene where the guy, like, pops a zombie boil in the custard, but, like, the dude picks up a lawnmower and just, like, lawn mows through a big pile of zombies, and there's, like, guts everywhere.
So good.
You know, if you tell Peter Jackson, look, this is going to be R, he would have really done a gory movie. So, like, it just, I feel like this movie really was hamstrung by not seeing the R rating coming.
Yeah.
And I think that hurt it a lot.
Yeah, I think they added a little more after the fact, like blood and guts to the scene where Jeffrey Combs' like face gets blown up. And it just looks like silly. It doesn't even. It looks just cartoonish and doesn't even warrant the R rating either. But they just.
It was so cartoony looking. I expected him to like reassemble his head and like straighten his nose. Like, oh, wise guy, huh?
Right.
Like, something like that. Like.
Yeah, it kind of was like his face is like blown off, and immediately his little ghost face is right there and just looks confused.
The neck stump looked cartoony. It looked like a cartoon neck stump.
Yeah, it was just kind of a tonal mess, which we appreciated. But the comedy horror, all that, it was just like it tried to get real brutal sometimes with the hospital scene and some other scenes, and then it just tried to just go straight up Looney Tunes sometimes. So I just don't think that the general audience of 1996 knew how to feel about this film, and it just sucks that it completely it's beloved, but it just wasn't as seen as it should have been. So it definitely has its own legacy, but if we could go back and say this movie made $100 million, what would you kind of want to see from a sequel of The Frighteners?
Well, I feel like it wrapped up a little too well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't like the end of the movie where Trini Alvarado's sort of like, I can see ghosts.
Yeah.
Too now, because I went through a trauma. It's like, and now your wife gave you permission to bang me, so she's going to watch that.
Yeah.
She's like, go back to Earth and have fun. Go bang that recent widow.
Yeah. Yeah, she got over that guy real quick, but that, I don't blame her. She was like, God, I wish this meatball would just like trip and fall on his lawnmower. Would you want to see the whole cast come back, or would you want like an entire?
I don't want a sequel to this.
No sequel to The Frighteners?
No. I think this movie was perfect the way it was.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Because if they'd redone it, it would have been like, oh, we got a whole new cast of wacky ghosts. I don't know.
Or it would have been super scary, right? It would have been either just funny or just scary.
I mean, maybe. I like that he got some closure and he doesn't have to be like a 2-bit con man anymore.
Right.
Because, like, how many people in that town, like, it's, you know, can you go to their house and be like, oh, I got to do Ghostbuster stuff at your house for $200? Like, how many, like, that's not sustainable. You're going to have to move to a bigger town eventually. So
yeah,
I didn't want to see that. When, like, they couldn't get Chi McBride back. And so, like, they get somebody else to do it.
Or the other guy. I don't even know who that actor is. Like the nerdy ghost. Jim Fife Stewart. Yeah, I don't know. He was
I just I Shazammed him into Hugh Laurie.
He was just this guy, and that's fine. It totally worked.
Got to be in a movie. I never got to be a ghost in a movie.
Right? Get your face chopped up. Yeah.
He got killed. He got the scythe through the top of the head, and then he turned into a pile of clothes like he used the Force or something. He got Obi-Wan Kenobi with a scythe.
Yeah, that was a little confusing because the Grim Reaper kills the ex or the husband. He rips his face off and throws the face skin off. Yeah, but then
throws the skin on the hood of the car. Yeah.
Later on, we get She McBride and the other guy, and I'm just like, they're up in heaven, and they tell Michael J. Fox it's not his time yet. So I'm like, so it didn't matter or it did matter? I don't know. It doesn't matter, right? Who cares?
Yeah, I guess not.
Who would you recommend this movie to?
13-year-olds. Honestly, like that, I don't think this is too much for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't think the blood they added makes it any more gruesome and unwatchable. I worry that today's jaded 13-year-old that has better graphics on cell phone apps that are free that are in this movie might. But my dad showed me Ray Harryhausen crap when I was growing up, and I was sort of like, wow, that looks like ass. But I didn't not like Clash of the Titans just because of that.
Yeah.
I recognize. I'm like, well, stop motion claymation isn't great by 1990s standards, but at the same time, I appreciate what this is doing. So I think people in their teens will get a kick out of this movie. But if you're a horror fan, you probably are already aware of this just because of the cast. And, the fact that it's generally if Peter Jackson had made this movie now, I think people would be way on board. You'd probably have a slightly different cast, but at the same time, it'd be I've established my bona fides both as someone who can do horror comedy, but also someone who just can get movies made. And I think people would appreciate the fact that he went to bat for New Zealand and got it shot there and spent a lot of local bucks hiring a lot of local extras and just, shooting in a town in New Zealand. It was mostly Wellington, I think. I don't know. People would appreciate the fact that he did something like that. So I think this movie would be a little bit more successful if it came out just on the basis of Peter Jackson having established himself. Mm-hmm. So I think this movie holds up. And, if you like horror or comedy, I think this has something for everybody. Really. I don't think anyone's going to be too off put by the wackiness of it if they really wanted a serious slasher, especially if they're fans of Jeffrey Combs and Dee Wallace like they should be. And I think if you're a fan of comedy, this movie has enough levity, and I think some of the violence is so over the top that even that's a little bit funny. I think it's got something for everybody. I think you had to really be of a certain age to be yeah, Michael J. Fox, that's our guy. We want to see him in everything. I was at that age, right? So
yeah,
who wouldn't like this movie, really? Who is this not for?
Right. Well, nowadays, right? I think it's just the right type of cynical and humor for today. I think it was just too ahead of its time. Again, it was kind of it had the whole Darkman syndrome where they marketed it as one thing and it just turned out to be a completely different thing. And it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that no one liked this, because even the people that did like it, like my sister, because I did contact her recently when I found out that we were going to do this episode, and I'm like, do you remember the Frighteners? She's like, yeah, I love that movie. I'm like, bullshit, you hated that movie. She's like, oh yeah, well now I love it. So I'm like, oh, okay. I get this now. So go, if you haven't seen it somehow and you found a show called The Cult of Films, you should probably go watch The Frighteners, because this is one of the best. This is what a cult film is. This is what this show is all about, these kind of movies. So if you agree with us, let us know in the comments down below. Like the thumbs up button or thumbs down, whatever you want to do. Jason E. Alt, thank you for being on rental from Film Hooligans to come slum it over here on The Cult of Films. Where can everyone find you, sir?
If you hit me up on the Twitters at Jason E. Alt, I have a pinned post that talks about all the other projects I do around the interwebs, including the Film Hooligans podcast I do with this man, Mr. Jon Dunning.
Yeah.
Mr. Jon Dunning, where can everyone find you on the interwebs?
You could find this very podcast right here at simply The Cult of Films, all lowercase. Go ahead and do that. We will be putting this up on podcast sites near you, all the Spotify's, iTunes, all that. Leave us ratings. Is there a good Frighteners quote to end this night on? I don't know. Well, boo.